Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy, the Insane Gang. Back at it again. It's your boy, the Insane Gang. Gang. Back at it again. Yo, what's up, everybody? So, this video, it'll be a little bit different, but I haven't really done any, like, societal life kind of stuff as much. So I feel like, actually, I don't even know if I'll keep that part in. The point is, today's video is literally about money saving techniques. Yes, it is the most boring thing you can talk about, but let's be real here. I'm an adult, I guess, as I wear my Nintendo 64 and have waifus on my screen that you can't see. I shouldn't have admitted that. That's besides the point. It's all money saving techniques. So there are different ways you can handle your money and invest your money. And there are things like stocks that everyone brings up and investing in small businesses and shit, which are not, it's not that they're not viable. It's just that's something that I don't inherently indulge with. So I'm not going to give advice about things I don't know about. But I would like to say I handle my money in the long term better than most. So yeah, and I'm gonna be real with you. Back in the day when the Pokemon Best Wishes reviews were popping off, your boy was getting a decent amount of money. Now, granted, things happened in my life that kind of fucked some of that money up, but for the most part, if I still ended up where I'm at, I think it was overall a net gain. So let's talk about some techniques that may help you and some things you don't know to do. So first things first, I guess we got to talk about the dreaded credit card situation, because let's be real here. When you're like 18, 19, motherfuckers start blowing you up all the time. Talking about, oh, well, you can have a zero APR on this credit card for a year. You can have zero APR on this credit card for 14 months. You can have zero APR on this one. Here's my thing. You will be hit up by multiple companies, particularly because you don't have a credit card. You don't have any credit. You pretty much have good credit because you don't have credit at a young age. So a lot of people are hit up at those young ages for credit cards. Credit cards aren't inherently a bad thing, but they are a thing that can easily, and I do mean very easily, fall out of your control and become massive amounts of debt. Because when people always look at a credit card, they always look at a credit card as if a credit card it's more money. It's like, let's say you got 5 grand in the bank and you get on a credit card for 2 grand. Most people, some people, a lot of people would think, oh, I got 7 grand. No, you don't. You have 5 grand with 2 grand that can be loosely used of that 5 grand in and out. Don't look at your credit card limit as extra money, because I promise you, you won't look at it that way when we get 3 months into it and you realize you owe about 9 grand and they're like, well, where's my money at? And you're like, I thought that was mine. No, the ability to use it was yours, but the money you still needed to have to pay back, because now you've just created a second line of debt. What did you buy? A bunch of frivolous shit. Some of it you needed and some of it you didn't. Figured you pay off a couple bills with it. Well, you didn't really get rid of the bills. That's the other thing. Don't ever use a credit card to pay off bills, okay? Credit cards are not extra money. So all you did was trade off one bill for another. Now, the only advantage in doing this is if the credit card in question has a lower APR or interest rate than whatever bill you're paying off. Most cases it doesn't. But if it does, let's say you bought one in the first year, right? You got a credit card in the first year. Okay, cool. First year, credit card, zero APR. So that means for the whole year, if you spend $20 on some cookies and you use the credit card to buy those cookies, you only got to pay $20 back. And that's zero APR. There's no interest on top. It's essentially like taxes if you want to look at it that way. Whereas, like, once you get into the 1%, 2%, 3%, 14%, 25%, that means whatever you owe when that month hits, boom, you now owe that amount plus 25% interest. So if you owe, which I believe would be like, for example, for $20, it would be like an extra $5. So instead of owing $20, you would owe $25 because you owe 25% interest. Shit like that. So just keep that in mind. The way I would suggest doing it is if you have any major bills to pay off, but you don't want to pay them all off at once. Like, let's say you could pay it off. Like, let's say I'm assuming in the beginning it would be smaller things. So like $300 to $500 bills. It's like, boom, I owe that, but I don't really have $500 all at once to pay. But you have a credit card that has zero APR for another like 8 to 12 months. Well, can you make those payments and pay it off in 8 to 12 months? Bet. Then do it there. Okay. You can then pay the bill with the credit card, but no, you now, instead of having a month to pay it, you now have like 8 to 12 months. But don't fucking forget about it, because once that zero APR runs out and it goes up to like 14% or 24%, that means you now owe the 500 plus 25% interest or 14% interest. The credit cards are great because they're used as buffers. The problem with a buffer is that motherfuckers get lazy. Motherfuckers be like, well, I got like 8 months, and then they forget about it, and then all of a sudden they get this bill that doesn't say the 500. It's like $620. You're like, well, what the fuck? I only owe that. And then the thing, and here's the other thing, and it goes to any bill you do, any long-standing bill. Never, if you can afford it, do not just pay what you owe exactly, especially if it's a large bill. This goes for anything like your car, your mortgage, just any high income bill. Do not, and I mean this, do not just pay what you're owed. I mean what you owe. Unless that's all you can pay, and that's whatever, that's fine. The point is, if you can pay more, because the interest rate on those things will kill you. On your car, on your fucking house, on any like high end bill, that interest rate screws you. That's why motherfuckers be like, oh, well, it should only take me, like, motherfucker, when I first started like paying bills and shit, my first thought process was, if I owe $1,000, I can pay, and I'm looking at okay, and my bill and my payment's like $100 a month. That means I should be done by the end of the year, right? Because $100 a month, 100 times 10 is 1,000. So I would be Gucci. This is me not realizing, oh wait, I have like 10% interest on it. So it's not 1,000. It's actually like 1,100. Like, and the thing is, the interest hits you every month. So instead of taking you the 10 months to pay it off, it actually takes you like 2.5 years if you're just paying the $100, because the interest rate is hitting you every time. The advantage is, the smaller your bill is, the less the interest rate really hits you. Like, for like, if you had a let's say like $200 versus $20. Well, 10% of 200 is like 20. So it'd be 220 versus like 10% of $20, which would be like $2. So it'd be $22. Like, the percentage is the same, but the less money in there, the harder percentage will hit you, right? But motherfuckers will just pay the minimum and then wonder why they're still paying. I'm like, because you're really just hitting the interest rate. Even when it comes to this mortgage shit, as I've learned, the early payments in a mortgage is more interest than it is like principal. Principal being like the amount that actually goes on the house. Like, if you owe 150 grand on the house, and your monthly bill is $1,000, but only like 600 of that is actually going towards the house, whereas the other $400 is going towards like taxes and home insurance and all that other stuff. That means you're only really putting 600 down on the house, and you got to look at that breakdown shit. I kind of went into the credit card thing really quickly, but the credit card thing is what gets a lot of people caught up. But if we're talking about like proper money saving techniques, going back to how you handle your money, the first couple thing is, you should always have a savings account, and you should always have a checking account. And you should always be in a position where you never touch your savings account. The goal of your savings account is to do exactly what it says: save. You are meant. There's one of the tricks I learned when I was younger was, no matter what I was getting paid, a portion of that money had to go to savings. And essentially, it was as if I never earned that. It was as if I never got that money. Because the way I look at my savings is the way I think a lot of people should look at their savings. Savings is shit that you don't have. Don't even acknowledge you have savings. The goal in life should be, when you have a checking and a savings, you never touch your savings. The only time you touch your savings is when you're making huge purchases, like a house, a car, something like major like that, right? Or like you're going into a new apartment, I guess, for some of you people, right? Like, the point is, it shouldn't be for any minute thing. Like, oh, I want a new game console, or oh, I want to buy like a table or some shit. Like, you should be able to do everything with checking. That's the goal. I understand that's hard, but that's the goal. And that's the other thing is that unfortunately, the era we live in, a lot of people talk about like mental health and the stress they go through and how they can't like manage the money and whatnot. And part of the reason I think that comes from that is that people like don't look at don't granted here's the thing, it's different for where you live at because not everybody has the same base income starting out. But if you're at the bottom, you really can't go any worse than being at the bottom anyway, because you're at the bottom anyway. It's where you start at. So, in my opinion, we'll take somewhat of an average income. Let's say you make I don't know. Let's say you make like like about, well, to be livable, you gotta be making, I would think, around like $700 to $1,000 a month. So that's humor it and say you make about an $800-900 $800-900 every 2 weeks. So you make about almost 2 grand a month, right? Of that 2 grand, I know a lot of that money has to go towards bills and living and apartment and all that other fun shit. So I know it's not really 2 grand that you're really keeping to yourself. But whatever, like, let's say your rent's like a grand, so that kind of hurts you already. That means you only got 800 to really work with. 800, and you're paying. If you're in an apartment, water's usually included, so you're not paying water. You might be paying what? Let's say you're paying your electric, which shouldn't be anything crazy high if you live in an apartment. It should be somewhere between $50 to $100. Let's say you're paying, that's already your utilities. If it's summer, you're not using gas. If you are using gas, you can add maybe an extra 50 onto that. But we'll keep it simple. Say you're using, it's summer, so we'll say that the electric bill is 100, and that you're not using gas because it's summertime. You might be, and this also goes into the things about what you are willing to put up with and lose. Because let's be real here, internet and cable are not like requirements you have for living. In most cases, especially if you're a younger person, you ain't even really fucking with TV like that. To me, paying for an internet would be a better. That's just a personal thing. Like, I haven't paid for cable back, even when I was paying for cable in my mom's house. I didn't pay for cable, and it's been over 5 years. I just haven't had, because you can do anything you want on the internet. So if I have the internet, I'm not really sweating television like that. I'm not saying I wouldn't still have a TV, but I'm like, now, and also we got smart TVs now. You ain't got no reason realistically to have cable, especially in like realistically. So I personally don't invest in cable in any way, shape, or form, and I don't suggest anyone under the age of 30 like invest in cable, because most of the content you're probably consuming anyway is online: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and so many streaming services like, Disney Plus, fucking Paramount Plus, Hulu, Netflix. Like, there's so much online content. I have no interest in like indulging in. So I would say don't ever pay for cable. No young person should be paying for cable unless it was just a better deal than just getting just internet. And even then, I probably still wouldn't do it, personally. But that's getting into kind of like the minutia of it all. But I do want to make that a point because it's important about picking what things is worth the financial investment. Because to me, but going back to the example, let's say all your shit added up on a monthly thing is like $1,500 to $1,600 of like the 18 to 2,000 you make. That means it gives you pretty much around somewhere between $200 and to $500 of free play money. I would say of that $200 to $500, 100 to 200 of it probably needs to go into your savings every month. The thing is that you never want to be in, and this gets into like living situations in general. You never want to be in a place where you can't save money. You never in your life want to be in a place that you can't save money, because that means you will never do any better than where you are at. That's like one of the most important things I have tried to keep consistent. Do never, ever, ever get into a place that you can't save any money at. Even if it's only $50 a month. If you cannot save money in the place you are currently at, get the fuck out, because you will never do any better than that place. If anything, you have the potential to do worse, because if something happens to you and you can't work, or one of your forms of income gets shot, you are absolutely screwed. 110% you were screwed. Never get into a place that you can't save any money at, because you will never do any better. And then be willing to cut down on certain expenses, fellas. That means getting off of the OnlyFans, the paying for like 3 different consoles, online subscriptions on a yearly basis, buying a bunch of new games, buying a bunch of new anime DVDs, paying into a bunch of streaming services. You should be going through your extracurricular financial expenditures on like a monthly basis. So that'd be the Hulu, the Disney Plus, the Xbox Live, the how many games did you buy this year? How many of them did you actually play and beat this year? Because these are the things you're going to waste money on, and you can get rid of if you need to. Like, all of this can be gotten rid of, and that's something you need to know, especially if you're getting ready to make some huge financial jumps and decisions. You should be constantly looking at what you're spending money on. Now, granted, if you live comfortably, let's be real here. A lot of us get lazy, and that's why a lot of companies ask you to like buy into reoccurring payments when you first subscribe to them, because they know you'll get lazy and not pay it any attention, and then they'll just get free money from you even when you're not using their service. And why do they do that? Because you ain't paying that much attention to it. But if you're someone who's trying to make some crazy moves or some major moves, and you really need to lock down your financial expenditure so you know what you should and should not keep paying for, put it this way: sometimes it's better to invest in bundles than it is to just do singular things. For example, I'll give you an example. I don't know about you, where your guys are at, but like for me, Verizon does that whole Disney Plus bundle. So if you buy into Verizon with your phone plan, and then you get that they add that whole Disney bundle, which is Hulu, Disney Plus, and ESPN, all included with that plan, right? Boom. That means me paying for my phone now includes that and 2 other streaming services, so I can bunch that shit together, and now I only got to worry about, and that's just one thing. Versus if I want to pay for Netflix, that's a separate purchase. Crunchyroll, that's a separate purchase. Paramount Plus, that's a separate purchase. And then on top of that, am I playing a bunch of online games on Xbox Live like that? Am I playing online with friends enough to justify spending $60 a year on an online service? And I'm looking like, damn, we only really play like once or twice throughout the whole year. Is that really worth the $60? And I'm like, not really. Cut that shit off. That's probably the reason why I would say Game Pass is a good investment for people who are struggling, because let's be real here. If I want to still have my fun, because here's the thing, at the end of the day, you should still be able to enjoy your money. If you spend your entire life only paying for shit, only paying for things, and never like enjoying the money you're making, this is where the anger and the resentment and the depression kicks in. So you should always be able to enjoy some portion of your money on a monthly basis, no matter what it is. So I still think like streaming services are still great. Gaming is still great. Whatever other extracurricular you want to do is still great. You should still be allowed to indulge in that thing, but also be smart about where the money is going with those things. So I'm using gaming as the example because that's something that I can easily correlate to. If I'm not playing online with my friends enough to justify spending $60 a month, or I'm not playing online in general enough to justify spending $60 a month, don't fucking do it. If you want like an Xbox system, to me is actually a pretty good investment, because you spend $500 for Xbox Series X, and then you buy Game Pass and you get access to a bunch of games, and you're only spending $15 a month, when we all know some of those games would cost you 60 to 70 to, and then you're doing that, like, let's say you buy games pretty consistently. Let's say you buy games like, I don't know, 5 or 6 times a month. 5 or 6 times a year. That's like what, $300 worth of games right there. Game Pass is like what, $15 a month or whatever. And usually if you're new subscribers, I think like the first month or two is like $1. So like you're already cutting down on how much you're spending on games while also still enjoying a fuck ton of games. That's why I said Game Pass very much is very beneficial for those who are like trying to save money but still indulge in a hobby. Like, it's great for that, right? But my point is, I talk a lot about different shit. Money saving is a lot. It's a lot of discipline and a lot of you buckling down and going over your expenses every month. You should do that every couple months anyway. You should be going over your expenses and looking at what things you pay for. Like, 'cause certain things you shouldn't be paying for. For example, if you want to get into streaming, there are multiple different like streaming apps and programs you can use to do. For example, for the longest time, as you guys know, I use XSplit. I don't use OBS like a lot of people. But you know what? One of the reasons why people use OBS and why it's considered so great, it's free. Meaning you can get into streaming as long as you have a capture card or an internet access. That's it. That's all you need because you already got your game console and everything, and OBS is free. You're not paying for it. That's one reason why I hate the Adobe Suite situation I'm going through right now, where I fuck with Adobe Premiere and I fuck with Adobe Photoshop, but man, that shit is subscription based, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it because there's a situation where I will never be able to own that software because you don't want to like this. The annual subscription nonsense is something you don't want to make like a mainstream thing that you always are fucking paying for because you'll get caught up. It's so easy to just start spending. When you think about it, like Adobe shit's like what 40, 30, 50, $60 a year depending on what it is. That's why they try to get you to do that whole all creative bundle that has everything, and a bunch of different services do this. It's like gaming, software development, all that other shit. So it's important to go over your stuff and what you're paying for on a pretty consistent basis to see how much of this shit you can cut out. Or for example, if there's things that you're buying that do have an all purchase option and you use this thing pretty consistently, like for example, I use XSplit, but XSplit also was subscription based, and I was like, fuck this. And I could have easily switched to OBS, which realistically would have been the smarter financial decision. I'll be real with you. But I looked around and realized that XSplit had like a lifetime license you could pay for. And I went, you know what? I've been using this shit since I was like 18. No, not 18. I've been using it for like at least 5 or 6 years. And I've been paying for it like that. Well, fuck it. Let me just go ahead and buy the lifetime. So now I own the lifetime of it. And I ain't worried about that moving forward. That's a bill I cut off that I ain't got to worry about. Now, granted, I didn't do it as fast as I should have because I'm not perfect. But like, do things like that. See, if there's still ways for you to enjoy the thing you enjoy and cut down or find alternatives that are less money, do that shit. The path of adulthood and financial responsibility comes in the form of you being willing to constantly check out what you're paying for, your options, and what things you can either consolidate or completely cut off. Like, oh, I don't use Paramount Plus enough to justify still paying for it on a monthly basis. So that's out. We done with it. You got to constantly be looking at this. So I guess the main points is credit card is not extra money. It's not. Look at it as an extension of your own money. Meaning, it's if you have $5,000 in the bank, 2,000 of that is more flexible than normal. That's what I would look at it as. Don't ever look at it as I got $5,000 in the bank and then I got a $2,000 credit card limit. Credit cards are also good to have, but I would say at the most only have like 1 or 2 or 3 at most. Because they will help you in those situations where life shits the bed and you need it, right? So, because obviously not every situation in life is planned. So the way I look at it is credit cards are not extra money. It's just it's just a more flexible version of some of the money you already have. Look at credit cards that way. It's okay to have credit cards to just have maybe 1 or 2 of them. Always be saving money on a monthly basis. And if you're in a position where you are only, if you can't save money, get out of that position because you're never going to do any better unless you get like a better job or something, which in this economy is kind of all over the place because of the whole degree nonsense and accreditations and all this other bullshit. So the point is, if you can't save money, something in your life needs to change. Either get a better job or get into a cheaper place so you can save money. If you can't save money, you are fucking up 110%. That's like, to me, that's one of the most important things. If you ain't saving money, no matter what position you're in right now, you are fucking up. You need to be able to save money in any position because that's the kind of money, because the savings is what you're going to use to make those crazy moves you want to make. And if you live in an area where you can't afford it, move. Realistically, move. Because you're not going to do any, you're only surviving. The goal in life is never to survive, it's to live. And you can't live in this economy, in this society, if you can't make any money or if you can't save any money. So you will always just be surviving. And no one wants to fucking keep doing that shit. If you can do it for a period of time, that's one thing. But that should never be the base. So, all right. So, credit cards are not extra money. It's just a flexible portion of the money you already have. Having credit cards is fine, but only have somewhere between 1 to 3 of them. Always be in a position where you can save something, because if you can't, then you just change that position. Um, Constantly be looking at your expenditures on a monthly to bi-monthly basis to see what things you can and can't cut out for more optimization of your funds and time. And finally, this shit is hard, but it's not impossible, and it's not like you can't win and enjoying your life. But don't let the money rule you. You rule over the money. And a little bit of discipline doesn't hurt at all. Actually, discipline is very much necessary to do better in life. So, yeah. Hopefully, some of these things are beneficial. I don't even know how well this video will do because of how weird and janky and not out of character, but just out of like my norm is. So, we'll see. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for the support. And maybe one day, you too will be able to save up enough money to do what you want to do. In a lot of our cases, it's travel the world. Go to places we've never been before. So maybe you'll achieve that impossible dream one day of going to Japan and spending exorbitant amounts of money in a lot of weebs' favorite place.